Hello everybody, welcome to our class. We're learning Ashlag Kabbalah. We are learning from this book called Spiritual Principles. Every week before we get into the book, I like to try to say something that like an overview kind of introduction that gets people, new students to Kabbalah, cued in to what it is that we're actually learning about. And so what I thought about after the last few classes is that somebody might think, after listening to a few minutes of Kabbalah classes, that we're just talking about being nicer people. That the whole thing is just, hey, try to be a good person, try to care about people, try to love people, and that's what we're talking about. It's very much a much more profound and life-altering and world-changing process that we're describing here, and that is transformative in a way that is beyond even what we can imagine. Transformative for the self and transformative for everyone else. So people who are in a religious community, in a Jewish community, are likely to have had people say, hey, we're going to go to this Kabbalist, we're going to this Kabbalistic rabbi, you should come. And so what do they find when they go to one of these rabbis who is supposedly a Kabbalist? And there are different levels of rabbis and a different level of Kabbalists, of course, but there are some famous Kabbalists that people did go to. There are, of course, the Hasidic rabbis who are, many of them are Kabbalists. The Baal Shem Tov was a Kabbalist, and many of the, and we know about the Baba Sali and many others who people would go to, and they would describe having either see some kind of miracle, or they would meet with this person, and then they would feel that this person knew about them. This person had some kind of, abilities to perceive and to even know information about them. To know something that's a secret, or to, just start a conversation with them, which seems to, as if they read a file about you. And so, what is the connection between what we're talking about being a nice person, and these powers that we see that people who are Kabbalists seem to have these powers? And so what I'd like to, I thought of a good example. If you have a very close friend or somebody that you're in love with, okay, a best friend, we've all had this experience where they call you and you say, oh, I was just about to call you, or, oh, I was thinking about you and you called me, right? And so imagine this power, which is the power of love. And imagine this power, if it could be expanded and amplified many, many, many fold. And so if we had this relationship with ourselves and with other people, it's called bestowal in Kabbalah, where we just thought about other people all the time, we would find out that we have these powers. It's called the sixth sense in Kabbalah. And the way that we develop it is by becoming more loving and more altruistic, meaning that we focus outside of our egos and we build these perceptions that are outside of our ego. The ego is this box that has a very important purpose, but it also keeps us from a lot of the information that is out there in the universe. And if you listen to people who are, sorry, there's a music class next door, so that's what you're hearing. You can judge for yourself whether it's a good music class or a bad one, but yeah, that's what's going on. So in short, that's the connection that between working on trying to exit your ego and expand your desire for bestowal, for caring about other people, for expanding your frame of reality and starting to feel in other people's vessels. And if that sounds something that sounds very like hocus pocus, or it sounds like something that's overly spiritual, it's not. If you think about, if you have children or you have parents, you can feel what they're feeling sometimes. When they're in pain, you feel pain. When they're troubled, you're troubled. And so all we have to do is imagine a volume control, and that we have an ability to dial this up to greater and greater and greater levels of perception, and that is what we're studying in. So I just thought it was important for me to make those connections between these two perhaps disjointed parts of what we're learning about. And the more we learn, the more a student is going to be able to see how these two things are two parts of one process. Okay, let's jump back into where we were. We were on principle 7. I will start from the beginning. There are 4 general stages of spiritual development. Receiving to receive. The desire to receive is ingrained in our nature. This is where we begin. We were purposefully created with this desire to receive and given the spiritual work of elevating this desire to its perfected state. In this first degree, we care only about ourselves and fulfilling our personal desires. Okay? So we said this before, we went through this, that the Creator had a desire to give over goodness to the created being and therefore created us with a desire to receive so that He could fill us with the light, fill us with all of the different various pleasures, okay? Both physical and spiritual. But that was the Creator, it said, the Kabbalists tell us, left a part of the work for us to do ourselves, and that work is to build back better. I hate, to borrow a phrase from the politicians. What we are trying to, what God left for us to do is to, on top of our selfish vessel, to build for ourselves these higher vessels, which are called souls, right? These higher souls where we have a ability to receive pleasure, but to be aware of the giver of the pleasure, so that we can have 2 qualities at once. We can have a relationship. We can be a giver and a receiver, and so that is what we're studying. And it sounds, in some ways, it sounds very, very intuitive, something that we're very, very comfortable with, and then in other ways, it's something that we have to kind of like flip our thinking. So that's what we're doing here. Okay, let's move on. Number 2, giving to receive. This stage of spiritual development is an intermediate stage between the previous level of loving only ourselves and the next level of truly loving others and having unconditional love for God. In this stage, a person is involved in spiritual work and is giving to others. The motivation for the spiritual work and the giving, however, is not yet from a place of pure love of the other, but is rather motivated by our hope of receiving a reward. In this stage, we are giving, but our intention is to receive. Okay, so this is something that we should think about this as an evolution of consciousness, right? So when a child is young, it's very natural that you have to tell them, if you clean your room, I'll give you a cookie, okay? This is very normal and a positive thing for a 6, 7, 8-year-old to be told that if they clean their room, if you do something for me, I will do something back for you, right? We don't want this child to stay in this stage forever. This is an intermediate stage where we're practicing doing nice things, and we need a reward in order to do the nice things. Now, most of us live our entire lives on that level. Even if we're in a relationship, we're like, I'm doing this for my wife, and then I said, what am I getting in return, right? And that's a quid pro quo, and that is, as we know, that is not the highest level. We know that if we're in the romantic stage of a relationship, that we're willing to do everything for the person, and we don't care about anything. We just want to give, whatever they want, and it just makes us so happy to do anything for somebody, and so that's a taste of what we want to develop in a more mature way, right? So that also is not the level that we're looking for, but at least it's a reference point for us to understand. So that second stage is called giving to receive, and it's the second stage in the ladder of consciousness, where we're doing things for other people, but we expect something in return selfishly. We expect something, one of our selfish desires to be met, okay? Let's move on. Third stage, giving to give. This is a state of being able to give only with the intention to give. The giving is motivated purely by love. There is no desire to receive anything in return for the giving, not in this world and not in the world to come. The sages refer to this exalted spiritual level as l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. This stage is not the final purpose, because we were created to receive, not to give, right? God had a desire. He had a desire to give over pleasure to us, to make us happy. He doesn't need anything himself. God is complete. God is a pure unity and has everything, and is all-powerful. And so what God was intending to do was to create someone and do something good for us, right? We're the creation. So here the Kabbalists is telling us, as high and beautiful as this level is of loving everybody and just being happy to make everybody else happy is not the final stage of creation. This stage is not the final purpose because we were created to receive, not to give. We were created to receive all the pleasure and enjoyment of God's gifts. Attaining a state of pure giving, however, is a necessary prerequisite for us to be able to progress to the next and final stage of being able to experience God's goodness in the ultimate way. Okay, so this is where what we're talking about gets very deep and very, very something that we have to hear and discuss over and over again and become familiar with it, because it's kind of a paradoxical way of thinking about things, but it's also something that we experience in life, and so we can understand what we're talking about. If you have somebody that you love and you buy them a car, you want to see them happy with the car, but you want them to be able to also be happy that you're happy. You don't want them to be happy and run off and not know you exist, right? You want them to be happy with the car. Wow, thank you. You got me this beautiful car. I love the car. It's really beautiful. It makes me so happy. But it makes me happy because you and I could be together and drive this car together, and it's also an expression of how much you love me. So you want the vehicle to be a vehicle for your love, you don't want it to be received selfishly. So in this is the secret, is that we already receive all the good things, but something's wrong with the receiving. It doesn't quite work, right? We have one car, we want two cars, right? We have somebody's in love with us, and then we're in love with them, and then 6 months later it's gone and it's broken and it didn't work out, right? Something's messed up, right? We eat a pizza and then we feel good when we're like a teenager and we eat a pizza, but then when we get older, we eat the pizza and we feel fat, bloated, and tired, and so something's wrong with the receiving, because we are in the middle of an evolutionary process, a spiritual process. And so in order for us to receive all the bounty in something, especially on the material plane, the physical plane, we need to receive it with the right kavanah, it's called in Kabbalah, which is the right intention. We want to be feeling, when we get something, is like, I want to make grandma happy. When I get these socks, grandma bought me socks, and I want to make sure that I make grandma happy by showing her how much I love what she gave me and how much I love her. That's what we're talking about, okay? Fourth stage, receiving to give. Once we have attained the very high spiritual level of being able to give only with the intention to give, it is then possible to come to the final stage of receiving to give. In this stage, two conditions are met. We enjoy the pleasure of God's goodness, and two, our receiving of the enjoyment is not motivated by wanting to fulfill our desires to receive. We receive God's goodness as an act of giving to God, to fulfill God's desire for us to enjoy, okay? So the first thing we said is that something that people don't want to hear, and this is why people don't necessarily want to engage this practice. We want to get to the place where we're just interested in giving, okay? So even though the final stage is that we're going to be receiving everything, we need to go through the third stage to get to the fourth stage, and that third stage sounds very troubling to our ego, to our selfishness, right? You say, oh, I just want you to take care of everybody else, right? So I send you out and I say, there's going to be a big party, and all I want you to do is make sure that everybody's happy at the party. And you say, what about my happiness, right? So on that level, we have to practice being happy by making other people happy. And so that is very difficult. That's why it's called l'shem shamayim, and the sages refer to this level, the third level of just giving, exalted, which means very high spiritual level, right? So if somebody can go to a party and just be serving everybody and going around and smiling at everybody and asking everybody how they're doing, right? And they get all their joy from making other people happy, this is a very, very spiritual person. This is a very, very evolved person. This is a very beautiful person, right? But in Kabbalah, what we're learning is that is still an intermediary stage. Second stage and the third stage. So we want to get to the fourth stage. The fourth stage, none of us are even on the third stage. We're all on the second stage 99% of the time, right? 90% of the time when I'm doing something good for you, I want to know how it benefits me, right? I did nice to you. I did something nice to you. I did you a favor. Now I need a favor back from you, right? That's how most of us are most of the time, even with our loved ones, which is very sad, but it's the beginning of the practice. The third stage, which is a very, very high level, which is I get my pleasure by making other people happy. Now people say that, and people feel that sometimes, but how many of us live our existence on that level, right? Don't worry about me. I don't need any cake, but just you have it. You have it. You have it, right? So a lot of people do say that, but are they really in that space? Are they really meaning it? Probably not. They're probably trying to either get there, or they're trying to present themselves as somebody who cares about other people more than themselves, which is, I guess, something, right? Starting, it's part of the work. But then we get to the fourth level. The fourth level is we enjoy the pleasure, right? I like the car you got me, but I'm not receiving it. I'm not receiving my pleasure primarily from enjoying the car itself. I am enjoying the car itself, but I see the car itself as an act of giving to God, to fulfill God's desire for us to enjoy, right? So what we're saying is that we are aware that everything is coming from God. We are aware of the bounty, and we receive it because God wanted to give us something, just like grandma, right? Grandma bought you socks, and when you get those socks, you better make sure that you smile at grandma and that you let grandma know that you love these socks, because that's what you're giving her, right? She wants to know that you received her love, right? So that's what we're talking about. And the secret here is that is the secret ingredient that allows us to receive all the bounty. Right now we're living in a very selfish world, a dog-eat-dog world, and everybody is struggling fighting over scraps. Everybody's trying to be happy. And I have the house, but I'm not happy. I have the car, but I'm not happy. I thought I would be happy with this wife, and now I'm not happy. Still not happy, right? Still not happy, still not happy, still not happy. Something's missing. What is missing? This is the level. The fourth level is missing, meaning that when we receive all of the bounty, but we are primarily focused on the giver, we can receive all the bounty without destroying ourselves, without killing ourselves. And that is a point at which we unlock the bounty. We're in a very finite place, right? The piece of pizza. So I can eat 3 pieces of pizza. That's a certain amount of pleasure, a very limited, small amount of pleasure, the Kabbalists tell us. Where is the abundance? The abundance is in that feeling of eternity, that feeling of unending pleasure that comes when you're in love, right? And that is precisely what the wisdom of Kabbalah and Torah and Mitzvot in totality is about, okay? Well, we have to develop in order to get to the place where we even can appreciate what's being told to us, right? The point is that we're trying to move from a stage where we are doing everything for ourselves, and then awaken to the realization that that's what's causing the problem. That's what's causing the limitation. What's causing the limitation is that we're locked in our selfish egos, and we're trying to put the eternal light of pleasure into a finite body, into a finite vessel, right? That is the problem. But we need to have an awakening just to feel that is what the root of the problem is, okay? Let me finish this paragraph and then we'll stop here, okay? We are now able to receive all the goodness that we were created to experience, and since our receiving is with the intention of giving, we are in alignment with God's attribute of giving. This is no longer the separation inherent in God giving and us receiving, because we are also in a state of giving, right, to you. And I want to show you that I care about you and that I want to be with you more than I want this car. I want to be with you, and that the reason why I like this car so much is because it brings us together. If the car is going to bring us separate us, then I don't want it. Imagine if you try to buy your girlfriend a car and she says, I don't want the car. And you say, why? And she says, I'm scared it's going to come between us. You'd be like, marry her on the spot. You'd say, wow, this is a person who knows how to love. This is a person who doesn't want any materialism to get in between our spiritual connection. And this is what we're talking about. Okay, everybody, I hope this made sense. We'll pick it up next time. Thank you very much.